All right, so like I said, those are the steps we're going to follow. Those are the steps you're going to follow for all of these problems. Okay? So number one says find the area under the curve or integrate from 1 to 2. The function is negative 15x squared plus 6x. That's the function. So the first question is, how do we find antiderivative? Do I simply use the power rule, or do I have to use U substitution for this one? Which of those do I have to use? I think I could just do the power rule, yeah. There's no real reason to have to do U substitution for this guy. Even easier, right? If you can just use the power rule, just use the power rule. So we're going to use the power rule. Power rule says add a power, divide by the new power. So it's going to be third power divided by 3. Plus add a power, divide by 2. You don't need a plus C on this one because it's got bounds. So then we're going to put that line, and the top bound goes on top, the bottom bound goes on the bottom. That means I'm going to evaluate it. That's all it means. Well, before I do that, I'm going to simplify. I get negative 5x to the third plus 3x squared. And then I'm going to evaluate it from 2 to 1. So step 1 is done. The antiderivative is negative 5x to the third plus 3x squared. Next step, plug in the top bound. Okay? The only place to plug in the top bound is in the x. So I'm going to plug in 2. 2 is the top bound. So 2 cubed is 8 times negative 5 is negative 40. 2 squared is 4 times 3 is 12. That would be negative 28. Okay, I'm going to subtract that. From when I plug in the lower bound. The lower bound is 1. So negative 5 x cubed plus 3x squared. Plug in 1, plug in 1. So 1 cubed is 1 times negative 5 is negative 5 plus 1 squared is 1 plus times 3 is positive 3. So you get negative 2. Negative 28 plus a negative 2, you're going to get negative 26. And so the area under the curve from 1 to 2 for this function is negative 26. And you're done. Okay. All right. Let's do the next one. So number two. So we have to evaluate this guy from negative 1 to positive 1 for the function. So you can rewrite it. You don't have to rewrite it. You can. If I was to rewrite it, I would have negative 1 to positive 1, 4x squared, and then this is 2x to the third plus 3 to the negative 3. Either one of those is okay. You don't need to rewrite it, but if you wanted to, that's what it would look like. So my next question, to find the antiderivative, can I just use the power rule, or do I have to use U substitution for this one? I'm going to have to use U. This is one of the ones that we talked about last set of notes, right? So U substitution, I'm going to choose this guy as my U because the derivative is x squared, and I see I have x squared already in there. Okay, so U is 2x cubed plus 3. Du, 6x squared dx, divide to get dx all by itself, So you have 1 over 6x squared du equals dx. Okay. U substitution. 4x squared stays. This becomes u. Dx is 1 over 6x squared times du. X squareds go away like we want them to. Becomes a 1, that becomes a 1. So if we're left with 4, 6. 4, 6 can move to the front. Or 2/3, yeah. Give me 1 second. I don't know why this is freaking out, but let me try to open it again. Okay. Okay. Why is this freaking out? What's going on here? What is going on here? Give me 1 second. So for some reason my 4, 6 u to the negative 3 du. Okay, so it would be 4, 6 times u to the negative 2 divided by negative 2. But when I divide by negative 2, I'm going to multiply that into the reciprocal. What's the reciprocal of negative 2?
Negative 1/2.
Negative 1/2, yep. Okay. All right. Move u back in. It's 2x cubed plus 3. So I get negative 1/3. So I get negative 1/3 times u to the negative 2 power. And I have to evaluate that from 1 to negative 1. Okay, so everything I've done so far, you guys have done before. The next step is exactly what you've done before too. So the first thing I'm going to do is plug in the top bound, plug in the bottom bound, and subtract them. So it's negative 1/3, parentheses, 2x cubed plus 3 to the negative 2 power. Same thing over here. So I'm going to plug in 1 and negative 1. Negative 1/3. That's going to be 5 to the negative 2 power minus negative 1/3. 1 to the negative 2 power. What does negative 2 power mean? How do I how do I take something to the negative 2 power?
Mr. Flores.
Yes.
Why is the first one to the third? Shouldn't it be a negative 2 power?
Yeah, the outside. Negative 2 power.
It's because u is
Oh,
to the...
never mind.
Yeah, the inside's a third power, the outside's negative 2. Yeah. Okay. So how do I take something to the negative 2 power?
You move it to the bottom.
Say it again.
You move it to the bottom instead.
Move it to the bottom and square it. Yeah, that's all you're doing. You're just taking the reciprocal and squaring it. So this would be 1 over 25, and this would just be 1 over 1, or 1. So we get negative 1 over 75 minus a negative 1/3. Well, first of all, it's going to be plus, plus, and then I got to multiply this by 25. So negative 1/75 plus 25 over 75 is negative 24 over 75. That would be the area under the curve, negative 24/75. So between 0 and negative 1. Now, that looks like a lot, but it's not. Antiderivatives you guys have done. This is just plugging in. That's all it is, right? That's all it is. Okay? That's all it is, plugging in. Okay? All right, so what I want you to do now is find the antiderivative. Do step 1 for me. Do step 1 on number 3. If you want to, you keep going, but you should at least be able to do step 1 for number 3. Okay, that's what I want you to do. Do step 1, find the antiderivative. I'll give you a hint, you're going to have to use U substitution.